Hi, I'm Lisa Jane. How did 2025 treat you? And I know we're not quite through it yet, but I've been reflecting on what actually happened to me on the inside in 2025. How did I grow? What did I learn about myself? And I had a really interesting year. I felt like I was just such a hermit. I really didn't go out as much. I wasn't creating as much connection in my community. I had a situation where some of you know my mum passed away last year, and interestingly, her executor, which was also her husband, um, we became, it was an interesting situation because that she was in quite a coercive relationship, and when it came to execute the will, it just wasn't executed. So I undertook this journey through the Supreme Court of New South Wales. Now, that's not something that I would normally do. Like, I really value my well-being and my peace and my calm. And, I'm quite happy to walk away from things rather than risk my inner calm and sanctity. However, it was like my intuition was saying, no, you have to do this. You have to do this. And interestingly, I had actually been saying to myself, I really want to reclaim my authority in the face of any environment, in the face of anybody, even somebody of a higher authority that I've been conditioned to stay small, to hold my voice back. I noticed that that little girl sometimes would appear when I was facing these higher authorities in our society. I don't think like that anymore, but that was something that was sort of conditioned into me. And so I was like identifying these areas in myself where I could grow and needed to grow. And it just so happened that when this will wasn't executed, I'm like, well, what do I do? How do I actually get somebody to execute a will? Because, it's a user pay society when it comes to anything legal. And I certainly wasn't going to expend a lot of resources on employing legal people. So my intuition was like, you do it yourself. And so I started to learn, how did I need to put an application in at the Supreme Court? How do I actually have my voice heard? And I tell you what, it was absolutely terrifying at first, especially when I'd have to turn up to a directions hearing. Like, I've got no idea what these hearings are. I mean, I was able to do it via Zoom because I lived in a different state, but still, I don't know what to say. And interestingly, when you're in these situations, the way it works is you often get ambushed, snowballed, dismissed, ignored. Like, it's very hard to actually have your voice heard as a self-represented litigant in the court. Not only that, the way the legal system works is they have all their little, like the defendant side the day before was throwing things at me to really make me feel rocky and shaky. And I noticed that as I was going through this process, because I really had no idea what the normal process was, I had to keep trusting my intuition. I had to keep trusting this sense of, I've actually got this. I don't know what's going to happen next. I haven't got a plan. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know how this is going to unfold, but I know right now this is what I need to do. Or sometimes I would just get on to the computer and I would just do something. I'd search for something, and all of a sudden that would lead me somewhere else and somewhere else, and then I'd have an answer to what I needed in that moment. There were incredible synchronicities, like somebody that I was speaking to recommended somebody that I'd known like 3 or 4 years ago that just happened to have skills that I needed in that moment. And I'm like, oh, I know them. I can go straight to them. So I wasn't in control of any of that. I remember walking into this, in Sydney, because the where they do the mediations is a grand old building, and these spiral staircases, which is so daunting. Like, you could walk into this old building and just be like, okay, what am I doing here? And I remember walking up the stairs, and my goal was just to keep coming in to my heart, just keep feeling the presence within me, feeling that sense of comfort and strength and aliveness and connection to a higher intelligence that lived within me, and holding on to that, armoring myself up for that with that, and just moving forward into the day. And had I not done that, I honestly don't know where I would have ended up, but especially on that day where I went into mediation. There was me sitting there with mediator, barrister, solicitor, and the executor. And actually, they were quite patronizing and totally thought that, like I was not a very powerful piece in this whole play that we were playing. And I was being authentic, which of course probably, that wasn't actually their speak. Although I can't speak for them, but I know that me being authentic probably worked against me in terms of their perception of me, if that makes sense. And just taken into this room where I'm sitting at a table all by myself while they're in another room and there's no support, there's no guidance, there's no anything. And just having to trust that whatever was going to come of today was going to come of today. And of course, what came of that day was absolutely nothing. And that was me standing my ground and not actually feeling like, even though I was being coerced to make a decision, all of the other pieces that I needed to make that decision were not supportive of that decision at the time. And it's like, all I can do is actually be really honest to myself and stay in integrity. And so it was probably the quickest mediation in the history of worldkind because it just didn't go anywhere. They actually weren't even ready to mediate or have any sort of negotiation. So I ended up just walking out of there. But that was just one instance of what happened over this year, like again and again and again. Um, because you have to turn up to a lot of these directions hearings, and often I'm ready to turn up. What am I going to say? I don't know the process, and I'm uncovering things. I'm asking for evidence. I'm asking for documentation, all of which was withheld to me until like September, like mid-September. So I had nothing to go on except for my intuition that something was really rotten in the state of Denmark, and I just needed to keep showing up until I got some evidence that I could use. But even then, when I expressed that, it wasn't heard because I didn't go through the right avenue. My capacity to let go, my capacity to trust that things were working through me exactly as they needed to work through me, and that the timing was perfect, and that I didn't need to get my knickers in a knot about anything because I continually kept seeing how this higher intelligence, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to call this life creative force that works with us, I continually and consistently saw it showed up for me every time. And sometimes it would be like the 11th hour, and I'm like, okay, I really don't know what to do. But then something would happen. I'd get some thought or I'd get some sort of guidance from somewhere, and I'd know exactly how to move forward. So I guess what 2025 really taught me is that being conditioned and trained to use my brain to fix everything and to have a look at what's going on in the outside world and develop a plan and a strategy and a fight and I'm going to make that work. And even with my business, I completely started to apply this to my business. So instead of that really going through my mind and thinking that I have to do something to make this right, I have to do something to fix this, I guess I was put into a situation where there was nothing that I could do to fix this. Like I was completely powerless in this particular environment and situation. And so my job was simply to let go and trust. And as I did more and more of that, coming to this place where, you know what, the only thing actually that really mattered in all of that was that I'm here. I'm here with me right now. And every time I started to turn up, I was here with me right now. I was all here. I was present. I was here. And that was such an incredible power. It didn't matter what happened because I'm already all here. And that was so much about what that whole process was for me, because so often I'm like, what am I doing this for? I don't need to be in this environment. I don't need to walk into this, system, which is clearly so toxic and dysfunctional and all not based on fairness or justness. It's all based on keeping people in the process and making money. Like that was so clear to me from very early on. But the reason I was there is because I had the opportunity to really strengthen and live through this incredibly unshakable knowing that when I'm here with me, really fully here and aligned and coherent in that space, my life around me seems to move in reflection of that in a better way. Like I'm safe and I'm cared for and I'm guided. And for me, that was like the most incredible thing that 2025 demonstrated to me. I'm still in that process. There's still no resolution, so I'll keep you tuned on that. But for now, the value that I find in that is that that's me actually walking my talk, because I guess I've often talked about this, using your authentic voice and coming back into our true nature. But the real life demonstration was this year for me, because it was like I had to find every single part of me that wasn't able to do that. And I had to go and reclaim those parts of myself. And that was so much of this year's journey for me. Really got nothing to do with information. It's got a lot to do with entrainment and a feeling experience. And that's where I guide people to come into that place. So it's not just giving information. It's like, how can I live this state of being in my everyday life? Because when we are able to create that state in our being, and I heard a quote from this morning, it was like, one person in coherence in their own presence can completely influence an environment where most people are in an incoherent state in their nervous systems. One coherent human in their presence has such an influence on the environment around them. And I truly feel that this is our way forward. This is, how we can evolve as a species, so we stop seeing so much division in our relationships and in our world, and we start to see more harmony and unity. So if you're at all curious, I invite you to have a look at my website, iamlisajane.com. I've got some 4-week programs coming up. Plus, I've written a lot about how I coach people. I don't just talk to your head. I actually do a whole lot of processes which really allow us to take back full responsibility and step into our true power, really unlock this coherence and flow in our lives. I highly encourage you to be the most authentic you can be, and find those areas in you where you can't speak truthfully, where you are holding back, because now is the time to actually step into freedom. Sending you love.